decided yesterday I wasn't going to use it, and as I was sitting there, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to start with this. So,
It's the 3 responses?
It's the coping, what hinders us from coping. I mean, from
It's not 38.
39, this slide 39. If you can't find the slide, I can tell you what they are, because I have them written on sheet paper. So, give us a second. It's always hard. This is the hard part of the day to rein it in. That's the slide, Jeanette. It is hard to rein it in for me after I have been out there. And 1, 2, 3, 4. I know there's a 5th one. And can we see the words? Are the words on, or you come bringing in one at a time? Okay, that's great. Perfect. There you go. Okay, I just am starting with this because those of you who might not have been here yesterday, we talked about free to follow and a lot of hindrances that are keeping us from following. And it really takes courage to follow. And this is just kind of out of our change groups and out of the Genesis process. And so I just like to bring that back so that those of you who've been through it can have this little bit of review, and those of you who have not been through it know what you're in for. But honestly, our limbic brain, which is the heart that so often Scripture talks about, avoids giving up survival behaviors and emotions. As a matter of fact, it is fighting you right now because it doesn't want you to follow Jesus, because that's risky. And our limbic system doesn't want you and I to do anything that's risky. It wants us to survive. And so the first thing that keeps us is, for some of your personalities, and this is very personality driven, you'll recognize your personality up here. Some of you are going to deny that you have any fears or any problems, and you are that you even have coping behaviors. You're just going to deny it. You're going to bury your head in the sand, this isn't a problem, and you're going to roll on with your life. Oh, sometimes I covet that gift. That would not be my gift, the ability to deny. Some of you are going to live in procrastination mode. And today you are going to say, oh, I really want to follow Jesus. But your limbic survival mode is going to kick in and it's going to say, later, Lord, not today. You know, remember last night when I talked about Luke chapter 9 and how some said, oh, I've got to go back and I've got to bury my parents, I've got to take care of my parents, or you know, I've got to turn back and say goodbye. This is their survival brain, procrastination. I really want to do it, but I'm just going to procrastinate. Some of you are going to say, we have 3 number 1s up there, 2 number 4s. That's interesting. Some of
I
you
didn't make these slides.
create that slide.
I didn't make these.
Anyway, some of you are going to say, I'm confused. I just am confused. I don't know what to do. I'm confused. And did you know that confusion is a wall that keeps you safe? Because if you get clarity, if you get understanding, then you have to act on it. So our limbic brain says, I'm just going to keep you confused. And the enemy loves that because he loves disorder and chaos and confusion. So sometimes in our lives, he is working overtime to keep you confused and to hinder your ability to even have time to get clarity. You know, silence and solitude and prayer. The 4th one, or the one after the 3 1s, is some of you are going to go into a defensive anger back-off mode. You know, you might go home today and you might already be able to feel the anger of, I don't want to give that up. And I don't want to let go of that God. And you could be, I really shouldn't have to. You know, I live in America. I have rights. I have freedoms. And you can feel it internally already welling up that you are just a tad bit angry that somebody would have even the audacity to ask you to give something up. And that anger and defensiveness kicks in. And the last one is self-justification. And that's when we just make excuses and we justify and we blame other people. You know, I can't do it because, you know, this, that, or the other's going on in my life. And I'm really right. Self-justification justifies yourself. You know, it makes yourself right. And I know that sometimes we've got all these reasons why we can't, and we step into self-justification mode. And y'all, we're never going to be free to lead or free to follow, free to lead, if we can't identify in our own lives what it is that's hindering us. And guaranteed, every person in this room falls into one of those 5 categories. There is something that is holding you back in your limbic system. And see, limbic system doesn't communicate in words, it communicates in experiences only. And so you've had some experience that has said, if I procrastinate long enough, I don't have to do this. If I'm confused long enough, I don't have to do this. And I don't want that to be the case for you and I. I want us to break free of anything that hinders us. Because see, if we're free to follow, then what comes next is the freedom to lead. And you know, in my Christian culture, some of this isn't true for you, but it's been true in my Christian culture that leadership for women can have a bad connotation. And that's not even what I mean by free to lead. If I'm following Christ well, chances are somebody's going to follow me well. And I'm going to be leading them to Jesus. I am going to, but I have to ask you this question because what kind of person are you willing to follow? What kind of leader are you willing to be? Because this is really important for us as a ministry team, for mentors, for prison small group leaders, for this ministry as a whole as we move forward. It is really, really important. Nehemiah showed up on the scene and nobody even knew who Nehemiah was. And if they knew who Nehemiah was, they knew who he was in his high and mighty entitled position of, oh, Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king. But yet they were willing to follow him. They were willing to follow him, so what made him okay to follow? And who would we follow today? Why are you even sitting in the circle? Why are you in this room? Why do some of y'all crazy women even choose to follow me? We don't think about this, and sometimes I tell everybody, choose wisely who you follow. Because it's way hard to get out of a followership sometimes. So choose wisely who you follow. But I think you and I follow trustworthy people. We follow safe people. I did not set out to be a safe person. That word is new in my vocabulary as of the Genesis process in the change book. But I've heard people say, I've heard some of y'all say this, I've heard outside people say, this is a safe place. You know, that resonates with women way more than it does men, that we are safe. Okay, if you're following somebody because they're safe, doesn't it stand to reason that somebody will follow your leadership if you are safe? We want safe leaders, trustworthy leaders. Leaders, Nehemiah led them through some risk. I mean, I know a lot of y'all intimately. Risk is not your favorite word, nor is change. But somehow you've stuck it out in this group. So it's not about whether I'm going to lead you to some risky El Capitan rock climbing experience. I don't think you care as much about that as you care about, are we trustworthy leaders? Are we safe leaders? There's nothing safe about building a wall in Nehemiah's day when nobody else is building a wall. There's nothing safe, and what I mean by safe is like climbing El Capitan. There's nothing not dangerous. So it takes courage. If we're going to be free to follow, it takes courage to move out of that comfort zone into the commitment zone. But what about taking one more step to where we're not just following Jesus, but we are acutely aware that we are free to lead others? And I'm a little sad because I think what we do, I've connected this dot, y'all probably connected it months ago, years ago, but I connected it in about a week, last week maybe. We say, I want to witness to somebody. I want to share my story with somebody. But what we mean is, I want to lead them to Christ. And how we lead them to Christ is by sharing our story. Does that make sense? We're leaders. Every one of you. And if you're not, then you're not sharing the gospel because your intent is not to lead somebody to Christ. So we've got to find the courage in these last days, in the darkest days, where we cannot explain what is going on in the world. I hear it in the mentoring class every week. We are trying to explain sin. How can somebody be going down this path? How can we have all the things that we have in society today that are so radically different than society when I grew up? Drug addiction, homosexuality, transgender, all the things that we're trying to explain. Y'all, there's one explanation for this. It's called we're in the last days. Sin, we're at the end of the spiral down. Yeah, the degeneration, thank you for that word. The degeneration process is at the very bottom. I don't have to explain it. I don't have to justify it. I just have to love people through it. And I have to be able to lead them wherever Christ will show me to lead them. And leading does come by love, and we've already talked about that. But leading also comes because we're safe. And I just want to challenge you to think about a few things before I move into this outline, because it's a relatively simplistic outline, but this first concept. I've read a book recently by Matt Chandler, and you know, I grew up in the society, and so did probably many of you, where to be a Christian was honorable. Anybody with me? You grew up, and if you were a Christian, you were raised in a Christian home, and you had Christian behavior, you were labeled as honorable. And I grew up thinking, you know, if I just tell somebody I was a Christian even before I knew I was a Christian, then that was, people respected you, they did business with you, they had a certain level of standards for you, and it was honorable. And we lived in what we would call a Christian country. But Christianity worldwide, but especially in America, has moved into the age of unbelief. Do you realize that America is no longer considered a Christian country? That we are considered a non-believing country? We are in the post-Christian era. That is hard for me to swallow. It is no longer honorable to be a Christian. It is no longer, Christians now are going to be marginalized. We're going to be pushed further and further out to the boundaries. And we talk about working with marginalized people who live in poverty. Oftentimes we consider them marginalized, pushed back from society with not the same advantages that you and I have. That will be the Christian nation that we live in some of our lifetime. We live in an age of unbelief. And are we free? Are we free to follow God? And are we free, unhindered from all of the things we've talked about, to lead people through an age of unbelief? We are not going to convert American culture back to the days where America is called a Christian nation. There's three things that we tend to do in culture. We tend to convert it. Oh, y'all, we want to go against the tide, and we think we're going to make enough waves, and we're going to convert culture back to the days that you and I were raised in 30 years ago. That's not going to happen in my lifetime and your lifetime. It's not going to happen. Don't expend your energy trying to convert the American culture. Another option that some of us fall into, and we're probably right now, even in part of this ministry, trying to step out of, I see the wrestle even in my mentoring classes from reading the Black Book. We try to condemn culture. And we try to be holy by separating ourselves out from the American culture and shaking our finger at the American culture and condemning everything that we see. This is wrong. I'm right, you're wrong, and we condemn the culture that is before us, which in fact does not make us lovers of other people. It makes us step back as condemners, and we're separated all right, but we're separated without love because we have condemnation. And just in case y'all forgot Romans 8:1, it says there is no condemnation in Christ Jesus. So for us to stand back and condemn the American culture and live in a black and white world, which is the world that I came from, and I'm not saying there is black and white, and it is not the color of our skin. It is called sin and not sin, you know, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a black and white world that we've lost our love and we are condemning. We see it, you know, you see it with abortion clinics and people that want to do mean and hateful things, as if taking out the abortion clinic is going to stop abortion. It's not going to do anything. But yeah, oh yeah, we've stepped back and we're going to condemn culture. And that doesn't make us holy, y'all. Doesn't make us lovers of God. It doesn't make us safe for somebody to follow. As a matter of fact, it makes them scared to follow us. And I want to be a radical. But let me tell you, I don't want to be a radical that has condemnation in my spirit. And the third thing we do is we just throw up our hands, and I don't know which word you want to use for this. I like the word condone. You might want to use the word consume if you don't like the word condone. But to me, I see American Christians just condoning culture. I can't beat them, let's join them. You know, this is the way America says it is now. I'm too old to fight, or I'm too young to care. And, you know, having a college-age student, I just see a college-age daughter, I just see how the kids of our culture, they just condone it. This is what we know. This is what it is. They have no ability to not mingle in. But for some of us, the better word might be to consume it, and you just buy into the culture and you just consume it. America gives it to me so I can take it. You know, Christ says that all things are okay, but not all things are profitable. So I'm just not convinced that everything in the American culture is profitable for him. And we've got to be so careful that we don't, in this unbelieving age, set ourselves up to say that we're followers of Christ, but that we're really followers of an American culture. Because nobody is going to follow us to Christ. And you know, I'm a discipler. I mean, I can't apologize for that. It's in the fiber of my being. I'm a discipler way more than I'm an evangelist. And y'all know what I mean by that. There's those of you who are going to go out and win the world to Christ, and there's those of us who are going to sanctify those people in the truth. But I can tell you this, I better be able to look Jesus in the face one day and say, I followed you and I lived a Christ-like life and I was a safe leader and people followed me and I led them to you. I led them to you. I don't want them to follow me. Don't ever follow me, y'all. If I am not taking you to Jesus, then jump ship. And there are days that I go home and I went, oh, I'm not sure I really led y'all to Jesus that day. Because, you know, I live in the flesh on some days. You know, we all do by accident or by buying into the enemy. But the heart and soul of me and this ministry is that we would learn how to be leaders of broken people, of places that need repair, and lead people to Christ. I don't want to be a leader in community. I was so convicted recently. I hate to tell y'all all my sins, but you know, it just is what it is. I was so convicted, and I've got to think about it. It was Tracy Strickland. Where are you, Tracy? It was really by a song that I hadn't heard. Tracy was at the office, and she texted me, and she said, have you heard this song? This is the song that was playing in my radio. And what's the name of it?
Only Jesus.
Only Jesus. So I wanted to hear why how God spoke to her through the song, so I'm listening to the song. And it said, I've used this word with potential board members. If I'm completely honest, as a source of manipulation. Sorry, Trudy. I love it. But you can't get on the board now. You said yes.
It worked.
Manipulate to leave a legacy. You know, there's lots of times I use that language. I say, don't you want to be part of the legacy that we are leaving in this community? The change is going to happen. And all of a sudden, as you listen to the words of that song, I was so convicted. So convicted that I don't want to leave a legacy in the community. I just want to leave Jesus. I just want to leave Jesus. And I'm sorry, Lord. Some days we make it about us. And I just want somebody to walk down the street of Zebulun one day and go, oh my gosh, Jesus was here. Jesus was in this building. You know, we say Kirk was in that building because it used to be his law office. I just want somebody to say, I don't care if they ever remember the name of Different Ministries. I just want them to say, Jesus was in this corner building right here. We felt him. We saw him. We saw the light. But y'all, if we can't grab a hold of the courage that it's going to take to live in an age of unbelief, and first of all, if you can't grasp the fact that we're in an age of unbelief, that we are no longer a Christian nation, that it isn't going to be what it was 50 years ago, if you can't grasp that, if I hear one more person tell me, oh, I wish we could go back to the hard days, I could come after you and choke you. Because let me just tell you, do you know how hard it is for me to leave the hard days? Do you know how hard it is for me to sit and teach Bible study with 5 women in the pews in the same church that I taught 200 women? And God hasn't convicted me that my teaching's gotten that bad in the course of the last 12 years. But He has convicted me that society's gotten that bad in the course of the last 12 years. And for those of you who were there with me, you know. There's no longer 200 women that sit in Bible study and do deep study of God's Word. Are we free to lead others? And do we have our heads screwed on straightly about what that means? Because it takes courage. And you know when courage shows up? In the dark, y'all. I'm just going to tell you, courage shows up in the dark. Talk to our Romanian friends. Our Romanian friends who we got to sit with and eat dinner with and eat breakfast with and eat lunch with and said, we were persecuted, we were tortured. And then, in the darkness of dark, under Ceausescu, who was one of the meanest, cruelest dictators, and their courage showed up in the dark. Their courage to have an underground school of the prophets. Their courage to stay true to Christ when their friends were not staying true to Christ. Courage shows up in the dark. And y'all probably get tired of hearing it from me, but I just have to tell you that I can't die tomorrow and not warn you. Get ready. And every day look in the mirror and say, courage is a value, and I will choose courage over comfort. Because it's going to take you the 365 days, or the 10 years, or the 5 months, whatever it is, because I have no clue. But it's going to take me every single day of that to convince myself to have the courage to lead people to Christ in the age of unbelief. As the days get darker and darker and darker, but courage shows up in the dark, and I want to be seen. When we find God-sized, God-given courage like Nehemiah did, in the brokenness, in the rubble, in the darkness, then we will become free to live like the people of God, living out the mission of God, marked by the joy of God. But we've got to find the courage, because if we can't find courage, we're not going to be free. Alex Honnold, as much as we think that what he might have done is absolutely, absurdly ridiculous, he found courage to live free. To live free, to follow. I never heard him say the name of Jesus, but he at least followed his heart. Which I'm not condoning that. I'm just using that as an example. But he found the courage. Leadership, y'all, is moving people onto God's agenda. It's that simple. And we talked about influence. Leadership is influence. So if you and I, all we have to do to be free to follow and free to lead is use our influence to lead people onto God's agenda. That's what makes you a leader. How you do that is you tell your stories and you share love, like we talked about this morning. And what God's agenda is today is, I'm convinced, to repair the brokenness that is within our reach. And I don't think it's the brokenness of society or of our culture. Every day I'm tempted to go into the prison system, and I just want to go in and fix the system. But I don't think that's what God's call is. I think what God's call is for you and I to repair the brokenness in the lives of people, not the system. Amen. There's no place in Scripture that Jesus fixed the system. There's places in Scripture where Jesus cared about the people. Just like Charity sang, he cared about the people. And so what are we wanting to do? Change culture, condemn it, convert it, consume it, or just help people, just love people. Help them break free of the things that are holding them back
from following Jesus, and then break free ourselves of the things that are holding us back from leading people to Jesus. And fear controls. Fears, I think I could have just written on my canvas today the word fear. I think I could have, I was watching everybody write all these words over the canvas, and I think I could have summed up all my words with just the word fear. And written it in black Sharpie, and then my paint probably wouldn't have covered it up, and that probably would have been okay because it would have reminded me that, Jane, you're struggling with fear. And fear, y'all, controls you and I. It hinders us. It stops us in our tracks. It keeps us from being all that people need for us to be. And it stops us from operating out of a place of freedom. And we quit seeking the common good, and we quit promoting human flourishing, and we quit ultimately loving others because of fear. And we deal with it every day, y'all. Every day. And I like to think, oh, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to go to prison, y'all. I have no fear of going into prison. But are y'all completely honest about yourselves about if the prison wasn't there and all the people and all of us, we'd say we'll adopt a child. That seems so non-threatening to say, okay, I'll foster, I'll adopt. Okay, what about adopting a prisoner? Y'all in that? You in for letting them all come out and come in living with you? Lisa's going to let one live with her, and Barb's going to let one live with her, and Candy's going to let one live with her. See, I love to go into prison, and I feel safe and secure, and I'm free to follow and lead right inside that gate with those walls. But you tell me that I have to do the same thing on the outside, and I fear. And I don't want to. Because how am I going to really lead people to Christ when he says, Jane, take this one in your house, or do this or do that? I don't want to be consumed with that. So pick up with me with Nehemiah chapter 3, and let's look at how he was free to lead. How he was absolutely free to follow and create his plan and go under the nighttime cover like he did and research and rally the people. And now we're at chapter 3 where he is right on the brink of getting started to lead. And he shifts now, although he never quits following. And I want you to understand that. You don't stop following to lead. And some leaders do stop following the lead. The best leaders are the very best followers. So Nehemiah is still following hard after God, but now he's picking up the mantle of leadership, and he is going to get all of these people whom he doesn't know to do a job that can't be done, hasn't been done in 25 years of people living in Jerusalem, because he's following God. That 25-year part makes me feel a little better. Do you know, so I want you to think about the fact that God has entrusted you and I to repair the brokenness. That's his method, as crazy as it sounds. That God says, hey, I'm not going to do it for you. You go do it. Be the answer to your own prayer, Nehemiah. Get on out there. Build that transitional house. Go teach those people who are struggling with addictions relapse prevention. Go mentor. He's entrusted you and I to repair the brokenness. The word repairs is used 35 times in chapter 3. 35 times. And this is what the word means. It has the idea of strengthening, encouraging, and making something strong. So I believe with everything in me that God has entrusted you and I to repair the brokenness, to encourage, to make strong, to strengthen the lives around us that are broken from whatever circumstances have come into their life. And this is what Ephesians 4 says. It says the church is for the equipping of saints. The idea behind equipping is the same thing. To strengthen and prepare, to make something able to be useful. Isn't that our heart's desire? To take women who are struggling and repair their brokenness and make them strong and useful again. Not successful, but useful. As Christians, the whole concept of the church is a body that comes together and is one. And we've talked about that, but are you the trustworthy person that is working next to the person beside you? See, Nehemiah was entrusted to repair the brokenness, and then he created a team, and you and I are called to work as a team. The church is called to work as a team, believe it or not. And I don't know, I don't always see the vision of team happening in individual church groups, but I see an amazing team happening with all of these denominations, with all of these different views, different churches. I received a letter this past week from a pastor who said, I've never spoken to this pastor face to face. I've never received an email from him. He's a local Zebulon pastor, and he sent me an email and he said, Jane, I'm proposing tonight that we write your ministry into the budget for $750. And I was like, whoa, yes. And then he said, but I have one question for you. I am making the assumption, that's what he said, I am making the assumption that you will work with diversity in Christianity that might not have exactly the same philosophy as you. Is what you. Same philosophy. And I said, that is true. Because there's not one of us in this room other than standing on the cross and a statement of faith that we believe in Jesus. And I'm saying, I know we stand on the same Jesus and the same cross. We're not talking about a cult or anything out there. We're talking about the diversity of denomination and the diversity of that. And I said, yes, that is accurate. But I can tell you, there's other people who would not want to partner. And y'all, if we don't get over ourselves, John 17, we talked about love, but I'm going to tell you, it's about unity. When they see that you are one, when they see that people who call themselves by the name Christ are working together in unity with one another, then they will know that the Father sent him. The greatest asset we have in the prison at times, especially for the guards, the officers, the powers that be, they walk in, and I've heard this told us so many times. And I heard this said to me by my pastors when they came into the last prison retreat. The prison and the pastors have said, that teamwork is simply amazing. Everybody just went and did their stuff. They just, my pastor looked at me and he said, this is not your first rodeo. He said, I was simply amazed to stand back and watch your team do what they did. He saw unity. He didn't say the word unity, but in his mind, team and unity go hand in hand, and we play together. And he knew that we were disciples of Christ by the fact that we were unified. So don't we want to work as a team? Together everyone accomplishes much, and Matthew Henry says a united force will conquer what no individual dares to venture on. A united force will conquer. And y'all, the crazy thing is the enemies are uniting against us. Enemies unite in order to win. And we as believers have to have that same philosophy, that we are willing to come together and put away our differences. If Jesus is the common thread and the resurrection and his death on the cross, and that we're saved and that he is the only way to heaven, we don't have any other. We can disagree about spiritual gifts and tongues and all the other weird stuff that we want to, I can't, the end times, so leaders worked as a team of leaders, and then leaders worked as a team, and leaders worked as a team, and that's the way it happened all the way through chapter 3. I am not, however, going to read in chapter 3. For many, many, many reasons. One, because I don't want you to go to sleep, and two, because pronouncing every one of those names is really challenging. But what I want you to see in this, and if you haven't had time to read it, please go home tonight and read it, because as the Flow Bible Study group studied this chapter a couple weeks ago, I can tell you that all I heard was grumbling and complaining before we came and sat around the table. There is nothing in chapter 3. It is the longest, boringest chapter. And then we came and sat around the table and we saw the teamwork that is in every line of this chapter. And we all stood amazed. So I want you to think about, what has God called you to repair or rebuild or repurpose, whatever word you want to use, and do you right now see yourself as a leader? Because see, this is the way it played out in chapter 3. Let me tell you these few abilities. See, sometimes we think we have to have certain abilities to be a leader. And I came up with 5 that I really think you have to be a leader. You have to have responsibility. And Nehemiah took responsibility for that wall. Nobody else was taking responsibility, and Nehemiah just stepped up and said, I'll take responsibility. Availability. I'm telling you, when I'm looking at people, I'm like wanting to ask them, how booked is your calendar? Because if it's too booked, you're not going to be a leader. You know, you've got to be available to get in the game, and availability is an ability that a leader has to have. Dependability. You know, you've got to be dependable. Accountability. You can't, if you're a leader, you've got to answer to somebody. You've got to answer to God. You've got to answer to your team. You have to answer to somebody. And then the last one is teachability, because you can't be a leader without teachability. You have to be able to learn new things, to grow, to step out of your comfort zone, to learn how to tag people on Facebook. And when Shannon said the word loathe, I loathe the social media, I thought, can we underline and block that? Because I too loathe social media. But I also understand that we probably have to have a presence there if we're going to accomplish the vision. So I've learned how to share. I've learned how to post. I don't do it often enough, but I do know how to do it. You have to be teachable. So here's some things, and it's the different groups. The first thing that Nehemiah did as the head leader, because most of the time we have a chief leader, and he delegated. Nehemiah was a delegator, and sometimes one of us have to step ahead of the game and we have to delegate. And I want you to see that he let go without letting up. And that's really important. That chief delegator has to be willing to let go of all the control things they want to control, but they can't let up, meaning they can't let go of their passion. Does that make sense? They got to get the vision done. They want to, and so they're still going to be around motivating. I read many commentaries that said Nehemiah was going from section to section to section to section. He was talking to the people and looking, but he picked up a hammer when he had to, but that wasn't his task. His task was to delegate and get a whole team involved and let them experience more godliness. So step up, step ahead and delegate. And the remnant, you know, when we are a remnant, like we are in society today, then we are the leaders. We are the leaders that are leading those who are the majority. The minority is now got to step up and be a leader in the minority of unbelief. So the next group of people they stepped up and they initiated. Nehemiah did initiate, but this next group of people were the ones that arose and built first. We ended last night with Nehemiah saying, arise and build. And this is what happened. The high priest arose with his brothers and priests and built the sheep gate and consecrated it and hung its doors and consecrated the wall to the Tower of the 100 and the Tower of Hanel. Whatever it is, Hanel. They initiated. And I wonder if you and I were left to be the initiators in a lost and dying world, would we take responsibility and say, I'll go do it first? That's a risky place. I'm going to go rebuild the sheep gate. And the high priests were the ones who stepped up and initiated and started getting the job done. Nehemiah was a leader, and now you see the high priests coming underneath them and being leaders. And they took responsibility for their section of the wall. And they just took the job. And they were the pace setters. So if you want to be a pace setter in today's society, you can step up, take the risk, initiate. I love initiators. Just come and say, can I do this? 90% of the time I'm going to tell that was Nehemiah's job. He delegated, but then he let go, but he didn't let up. He made sure that the gates were done right, that the walls were all filled in, that they connected. He didn't just say, do it any old way. He said, sure, do it that way. And then he followed with some accountability there. So delegate, initiate, and then step out and participate. Get in the mix, whether you're qualified or not. And that's what all these people, if you read this chapter, there were perfumers. Let me say, they stepped out and they participated, whether they were qualified or not, wherever they were asked to. This is Lou Ann Lyles' application of the year. When we were studying this, she said, sometimes we have to work in crappy places. One group of people had to go to the refuse gate or the dung gate. And no lie, that's where all the garbage, all the dung, everything. And one group of people just said, well, I might be a perfumer or I might be a goldsmith, but I'm going to go to the refuse gate and I'm going to build. They just got the mix. Didn't care that they didn't have the skill, maybe never held a hammer in their life. I'm not sure Nehemiah had ever held a hammer. So some of us have to just be willing to work in crappy places, wherever. Baruch, in verse 20, it says that he zealously worked on the high priest's quarters, while the high priest worked on the sheep gate. So sometimes you and I are called to work on a leader's spot, while the leader's doing something else. You know, we're called to just say, hey, I see the responsibility that you as a leader have over here, so I'm going to come and do this for you over here. I love that. He didn't care what he was doing. He just was willing to step in and get the job done. In verse 27, some moved on and helped by repairing another section. They started, and 5 times it says, this group of people, and it was 5 different groups, said this group of people repaired another section. So they didn't just do what, okay, I'm done, check off the list. I set my table, I decorated it. No, they went to the next table and decorated it. They went to the next section and they helped out where they could. Sometimes we're called to participate, however, even when it's not our specialty, it's not our calling, it's not our career, like the goldsmiths and the perfumers. You know, a perfumer was somebody who made salve and ointment. This works for all y'all essential oil people. That's what they were doing. They were making perfumes and salves and oils, and now they probably had soft hands, y'all. That's what they did every day. And now they're out building gates and putting stone. And you know, I wish we could have brought stone in here to show you, but it's like
I have a picture.
Okay, yeah, show us the picture, because this is what they are thinking was part of Nehemiah's wall that they've uncovered recently. And it's not bricks that are easy for you and I to put one in both hands. This is what they were putting in, stones. And they've, whatever that word is, excavated that recently and are determining that the period of time was probably one of the older walls in Jerusalem from Nehemiah's time. So this is hard work. But however God calls us, and whatever's within our reach. Sometimes, y'all, we are way too picky about what we do. And we think we have got to be specially, you know, orchestrated. And I'm just saying, they just did what was within their reach. It was a project. It was a season. God might not call you to build a wall or repair brokenness until you die. But I believe right now, if He's called you on this team, I'm hoping that you have this burden in your heart that says, you placed me here for such a time as this, and I'll do whatever it takes. I don't care what I have to do. Whoever, you know, the daughters of Shalom in verse 12, it says that, in verse 12, I thought this was so interesting. Shalom was an official of half the district of Jerusalem, so he was, you know, high up. He made repairs, he and his daughters. So we're not exempt. You know, the women of that day were not exempt. Some commentaries say that they were the wealthy widows and that they wrote the checks. Well, you know what? I'm sure that money was needed. But that's not what the scripture really says. It says that him and his daughters made repairs. So, you know, the women were working hard too. And whenever. And, you know, the time is now. For Nehemiah, the time was right then. And let me just paint you a little bit of a picture about what was going on in the city of Jerusalem. The temple had been rebuilt, and after that, everybody, that was Zerubbabel, had come back and rebuilt the temple. Ezra had come back. Esther had just, stood up to the king in Persia, and the Jews were not going to be annihilated. And now Nehemiah's come onto the scene, and the whole town is still in devastation, in ruin and rubble. I thought of New Orleans after Katrina. Such devastation that the shops were closed, that income was hindered, that the morale of the people was so destroyed that nobody could pick themselves up and do anything. So this has gone on for 20 years. So they've started to pick themselves up in this sense. They're surviving. They have some little shops, and they've got a home to live in, etc. But now Nehemiah's coming in and going, stop everything. Stop your business and shut up your shop and bring your children to the wall, and all of us for the next 52 days, nothing is going on in your life except for building this wall. Stop living. That's basically what he said, lay down your life for the people of God. Nehemiah had a greater good. And if I were one of those people, and I can hear us in here, those of us who own businesses, those of us who understand that concept, we're going, whoa, 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 I can't do that. I cannot stop my business for 52 days. I cannot shut my shop up. How am I going to eat? What's going to happen? How is this going to work for me? And Nehemiah's saying, just trust God. Come on, be a team player. Work as a team. We're going to build the wall. It's all going to be okay. That's what he did. And all the people joined together, and they stepped in and didn't just participate, but they cooperated. Everybody cooperated except for that one little group of people that were the nobles. And the nobles of the land said, we're too good for this. They were entitled. It didn't fit their job description. It didn't seem to be what they were comfortable with, and so they didn't do it. And I think what is so funny about the nobles is they were lumped in with the Tekoites. And it said, moreover, next to him, the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not support the work of their masters. So there's this rebel group of team members who said, sorry, I'm not going to do it. So you know what the Tekoites did? They were one of the 5 groups that did another section. I just think love covers a multitude of sins. They said, okay, we've lost half our team, but we're going to show them we're just going to work that much harder, and we're going to move on, and we're going to build another section of the wall. I don't want to be a noble, y'all. Do you really want to be written in one of the books of the Bible as the people who did not support the team? Not my idea of what God wants for me. Jeanette, do you have a PowerPoint slide of the team with the analyzer and the supporter and the... Yep. I love the wordings on this. I think I stole this from Angela. Hang on. It's coming. I can feel it. Woo! Everybody, we've talked about some of these team members, but look at the analyzer who is looking at those puzzle pieces like Angela said she wanted to do today. Just give me that sheet of paper and don't make me be the driver. But she was willing to be the driver. She didn't say, I'm an analyzer, I can't be the driver today, somebody else do that. But the analyzer is looking at all the bricks, all the bolts, all the beams, and saying, okay, maybe this is how we should do this. And they're kind of off the loners, because that's their job. They're analyzing. And then you've got the supporters who are taking the bricks and the stones or the puzzle pieces, and they're moving them to the next place. And then you've got that risk taker who is out in front. Sometimes we have to switch roles. And I love this visual. Jeanette just takes and makes these darn visuals. I say, this is what I want this to look like. I've not seen this. This is the first time I've seen it. And look, if this is what you and I could do, if we could analyze and put puzzle pieces and put things together and take risk, we could accomplish everything we need to accomplish in the Greenhouse Project. We can, the programming, y'all, is all established. We're living the programming, we're doing it. and the creative expressions room and have a house. But we've got to have all of us working in unison, cooperating to do whatever. And those nobles, what it meant was they would not bend their necks and submit. I thought that was interesting. It literally meant, when it said the nobles did not support, I looked up the word support, and it said they would not bend their necks and submit. They were stiff-necked. And I thought, okay, that gives a whole new meaning to that. So where are we? Do you know who you are on the slide? Do you know what responsibilities you can take responsibility for as part of a team? Because it takes everybody. Do you know somebody who you can drag along with you? Who you can say, come on, see, LaShawn's here because Kendra said, come on, girl, I'm bringing a friend. And she drug her onto the team, and we're so grateful. And I know she's glad to be here on most days. I just wonder, though, in Nehemiah's time, those city people, they didn't live in the American culture. And were they really, you and I can get sidetracked by materialism, by worldliness, by travel, by entertainment, by money, by hobbies, by family. We can get sidetracked by so many things, and then we're just not going to have anything. Jesus isn't going to be known on our street corner. He's going to be known, our lives are going to speak. And, I've been to enough funerals to know that one word is going to sum up every one of our lives. I went to 4 in 1 month of January one year. And every funeral I went to, you could sum up that person's life in one word. Service, family, music. What one word do you want to be summed up? Your life. Jesus. Jesus. Team. Rallying together. So where's your focus? And I read this recently in another book I was reading, and I thought it was an interesting analogy. He said, sadly, sometimes we identify as a recreation